much for you to consider, Commissioner. The many aspects of your mandate include making recommendations to provide guidance for potential refinements to the Emergencies Act and guidance for future invocations of the Act. The Government of Alberta would highlight in this brief time 2 main points related to this aspect of your mandate. First, consultation with the provinces is required by the Emergencies Act. This is extremely important to our constitutional system. It is not a suggestion to which the federal government can just pay lip service. One aspect of this is timing. We have heard extraordinary evidence that the Government of Canada did not want to raise the potential invocation of the Act with the provincial governments until more than a few hours before it would be invoked on February the 14th, because they were afraid that the information would be leaked to the public. And yet, the Federal Minister of Emergency Preparedness himself spoke to more than one national media outlet the day before on February the 13th. Being suspicious of the provinces, especially after a federal minister has already raised it with the media, cannot be an acceptable reason for the Government of Canada not to have the required, meaningful, good faith consultations with the provinces about a matter as serious as invoking the Emergencies Act. Another aspect of this is weight. 7 provinces advised the Government of Canada that they did not support the invocation of the Act in their province, that there was no need, and that they had the capability and authorities to deal with the situation. And in fact, provinces including Alberta did deal with it before the Emergencies Act was invoked with existing capability and authorities. The Incident Response Group was told on the afternoon of February the 13th, the day before the Prime Minister says he decided to invoke the Emergencies Act, that an enforcement action was being undertaken at Coutts. And the Prime Minister has acknowledged today that he was advised at the time of the First Minister's meeting that the enforcement action was well underway, that arrests had been made, and that Coutts was secured. The relevant test under the Emergencies Act requires that, in order for it to be invoked for a public order emergency, the situation must exceed the capacity or authority of the province to deal with it. If the Government of Canada has been advised by the provinces prior to invoking the Emergencies Act that it does not exceed their capacity or authority, can that simply be ignored? We have heard evidence about worries that protests might return, and we have heard of the convenience of freezing accounts at financial institutions across the country to convince people to leave. But can worries and simplicity trump the wording of the legislation and the constitutional deference that must be afforded to the provinces? As counsel for the Commission put it to one minister during examination, if what the Government of Canada did in this case qualifies as sufficient consultation, is there anything that wouldn't? Next, appropriateness of the measures included in the order and regulation issued under the Emergencies Act is another area of review. Freezing the bank accounts of Canadians engaged in political protest without due process is extraordinary. We have heard evidence that it was not only accounts of those protesters, but joint accounts, meaning Canadians who weren't at the protest at all had their accounts frozen. The question is whether the fact that it might have been a quick way or an easy way to bring a protest to an end can be accepted as sufficient justification for such a serious and broad infringement on the rights of Canadian citizens, particularly when there were clearly other adequate tools to enforce the law and bring the protest to an end. Among the many issues raised in these proceedings, these are just 2 that we are hopeful the Commission will carefully consider. And we would like to thank you again, Commissioner, for the opportunity to participate in this important inquiry and for the work done by you and Commission Counsel.